Hi, I'm Leighton,
And I'm Gavin, and this is
the Science Guys podcast.
the podcast where two guys talk about STEM facts, news, and interviews.
This episode is a special interview with a science teacher from Northeastern School District, Mr. Graham.
Hi guys,
So how are you doing today, Mr. Graham?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be on your show. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for coming. First guest on our
First guest.
new show,
I set the bar really high, I hope.
hopefully. Today we're going to ask him some questions about his thoughts on STEM and just overall opinion on what it's like to be a science teacher in a school.
All right, how much time do I have? I have like hours. No, I don't. I'm just joking. I don't have hours of material. We'll keep it concise.
All right. The first question we're going to start off with is, why do you think it's important for the youth to be educated in STEM?
And you really came out swinging with that first question. That is a big question with a lot of facets to it. So, in my opinion, these are just my opinions. My opinion is based off of my experience. Almost nothing today is pushing our society faster than science and technology. And I know there's other acronyms and letters in STEM, but we'll just focus on science and tech. Nothing is pushing our society faster, in my opinion, than technology. And as an example, like in the turn of the 20th century, when electricity became more mainstream, it wasn't just a parlor trick. Electricity transformed society, pushing new careers, new jobs that people couldn't even imagine at the time. And today, as a small example, like I know AI, artificial intelligence, is probably pushing our society even faster than electricity did at the turn of the 20th century. AI is going to create jobs and opportunities that we can't even imagine today. Like we can imagine, like for example, like and I'll date myself. If you would go back in time and tell Mr. Graham in high school, "Hey, I want to be a YouTube influencer," I would have said, "What is that?" That wasn't a thing, right? So going back to AI, AI is going to push a society and it's going to create more jobs that we can't even think of what those jobs will be today. And so, going back to the question, having a solid understanding of science and technology, which is what I'd like to think I do, is just critical for future workers of tomorrow. It's going to be absolutely critical to have even just a base understanding or a deeper understanding of science and technology. So that's what I think.
Another question for you. How did you get into STEM?
So I was really fortunate enough to have some really great science teachers through high school and college. I remember one particular science teacher who taught oceanography at the college I went to. I went to Edinburgh University in Northwest Pennsylvania, and he was so dynamic and so engaging and so interesting. He made oceanography, which by the way was a summer class. When I took it was a summer class. He made oceanography fun and interesting as it could possibly be, being so far away from the ocean. I still to this day remember how good that class was. So I had a lot of great teachers kind of inspire me. I was fortunate. So
Yeah, and great teachers really are just such a great thing to have throughout your life because I know you inspired Leighton and I, and you're one of the reasons we wanted to do this podcast and why we had you on here.
that's high praise. I really appreciate it. Thank you. That means a lot.
Keeping on the subject of teachers, what is your advice for those who wish to pursue your career?
Yeah. So anybody who wants to be a teacher, my best advice to them is make sure that this is the career that you want. And the best way to do that is to volunteer, whether you're in high school or in college, for school after school programs. Schools are always looking for volunteers. Spend as much time as you can in the school with students and make sure that this is something that you want to do. Because I think people who have been in education long enough have seen a similar story play out. Maybe somebody comes and does student teaching, and by the end of student teaching, they realize that this is not the career for them. And it's okay to change your mind, but if you would just change your mind a little bit sooner, you could have saved a lot of money and a lot of time. So my best advice is volunteer in schools, get your foot in the door, and just make sure that before you continue on with college or your training, that it's something you definitely want to do.
On the topic of careers, what would someone have to do to be qualified for your profession?
So you have to be crazy. No, I'm just kidding. You don't have to be crazy, but it helps. No, so keep in mind, all the information that I have is early 2000s information. That's when I graduated from college. Not to date myself too much. So, and this could have definitely changed since then. Uh, but every teacher has to have a 4-year degree. You have to go to your college and study whatever you want to be teaching, whether that's history or special education or science. Um, you have to go through whatever 4-year program they have, and then near the end of that program you have to do a field experience, which is like a practicum, where you go and observe a teacher teaching. And you don't necessarily have to help out in that classroom, although you can if you want to, and the cooperating teacher allows that. And then after the practicum, then you do student teaching, which is meant to be difficult. Student teaching for most people is very hard, but it's meant that way to stretch you as a person, to stretch you as an educator, to broaden your horizon and teach you as much as you can, teach you as much as possible in a short amount of time. On top of the college requirements, you also have to take Praxis Test 1, Series Set 1, and Praxis 2. Some states, Pennsylvania is not one of them, some states do require Praxis 3, which is more of a portfolio, a yearly portfolio. But other than Ohio, I'm not sure what other states require Praxis 3. But there is a Praxis 3 out there, and some states do require that.
For science teachers in particular, are the bad science puns a requirement?
Yes, they're definitely a requirement. I'm done blanking now. You hit me with that. I have no bad science puns at the moment. I don't know. I guess the only one that comes to mind is for scientists when they get sick. If you can't helium, you gotta bury them. That's the only one I can think of right now.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I don't trust atoms. They make up everything. So, what is an average day of work like for you?
That was a nice joke. I liked it. An average day of work for me is really not much different than a day of school for any student. I show up here about 7 o'clock. I start putting together pieces of my lesson. I'll check links, check videos, make sure that they're still working. Um, and basically, my job is to put these pieces, whether it's a worksheet or an activity or a lab or simulation or video, and put them together in a meaningful way that both takes the majority of the class period, not to waste time, but the majority of the class time, so there's not a lot of downtime, but also to make sure that they're relevant to what we're doing. And as you get further in your education career, you have more things like you have more worksheets and videos and things that you could pull from to put those like puzzle pieces together to make your day. And so that's a tip. And at the end of the day, when students go home, I'll do some grading, maybe erase the board, get ready for the next day, try to set up whatever basically we're going to be doing for the next day, and then when I come in, just rinse and repeat, I guess. So yeah.
That sounds like an interesting workday. So, what aspects of STEM interest you most?
I think the aspect of STEM, and I'll just focus on the science part, that interests me the most, I think, would be the atmosphere that we all live under. We know so little about it, which to me is fascinating. That we live under this ocean of air we call the atmosphere, and yet there's layers of it and there's parts of it, and there's sections of it how the particles in the atmosphere interact that we still don't know. We're still learning new things about it. So that's I guess meteorology and the atmosphere is one aspect of science that still is really fascinating to me. Very, very interesting.
The fact that science just progresses constantly is so fascinating. It's so hard to imagine what everything will be like 100 years from now. But so, on the subjects of science, what is your favorite one to teach?
Well, I'm pretty fortunate to teach physical science, and I really couldn't imagine teaching anything else. Um, in my class, at least, I like breaking up um, the class with hands-on activities or demonstrations. Those aren't always possible to do every day because the logistics of setting up and tearing down labs would be a lot. But I do like breaking up either worksheets or more traditional school, I guess, with hands-on experiences. And so I guess my favorite subject to teach within science would be physical science because I think there's a lot of hands-on activities to do with that, I just couldn't imagine teaching anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I know every day that we came to your class, it was one of the highlights of our days because of just how interesting you made the class and how interactive you tried to make it.
I
So,
appreciate that. That's what I was going for. I really appreciate it. That's good feedback.
yeah, well, I guess that's it for today's episode. Thank you very much to Mr. Graham for answering our questions.
Thanks for having me.
Tune in next time on
The Science Guys Podcast.